My name is Aloud. I'm 33 years old. And 7 months after burying both of my parents, my adopted brother walked into my new condo, picked up my house keys, slid them into his jacket pocket, and told me he could drop me at a shelter. Interesting thing about betrayal. Sometimes it doesn't arrive screaming. Sometimes it arrives wearing family. The condo still smelled new. Fresh paint. Cardboard boxes. Salt air drifting through the balcony screen doors. I hadn't even unpacked the kitchen yet. And already, someone was trying to erase me from my own home. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't beg him to hand the keys back. I just stood there barefoot in my robe holding a coffee mug while my brother calmly discussed listing my condo like I was already gone. His wife smiled the entire time. That part stayed with me later. Not the words. The smile. Because manipulative people often rehearse compassion more carefully than honesty. 1 hour after they left, I sent Trent 3 words. Look inside Dad's lockbox. He called back 4 minutes later. 5 voicemails followed. By the next weekend, 40 strangers watched my brother realize our father left him one final message. And honestly, I still don't think he recovered from reading it publicly. But none of that makes sense unless you understand the 14 months before my mother died. Because families don't fracture suddenly. They crack slowly. Quietly. One avoided responsibility at a time. My mother's name was Helen Aloud. Kindergarten teacher. 27 years. The kind of woman who still cut sandwich crusts off for visiting children because little things matter. She got diagnosed with ovarian cancer on a rainy Thursday in August. Stage 4 by the time scans came back. Treatment possible. Cure impossible. Interesting how doctors learn to say devastating things gently enough people keep breathing afterward. I moved back into the family house on Elm Street 2 days later. Worked remotely from the probate law firm where I'd been a paralegal for 10 years. Laptop in the guest room. Hospice equipment in my childhood bedroom. And honestly, the house stopped feeling like a home almost immediately. It became a schedule. Medication alarms. Insurance calls. Late-night pharmacy runs. The oxygen machine hummed 24 hours a day beside Mom's bed. I learned how to change tubing at 3 in the morning without turning on lights. Learned which grocery store stocked the cheapest nutrition shakes. Learned exactly how long fear can stretch before exhaustion replaces it. My brother Trent visited 3 times. 3. In 14 months. Interesting thing about grief afterward. People always say everyone handles loss differently. But absence isn't a coping style. Sometimes it's just absence. His wife Whitney never came inside once. One afternoon she dropped him off in the driveway and waited in the car with the engine running the entire visit. 40 minutes. That was his longest stay. I wasn't angry then. Honestly, I didn't have enough energy left to be angry. Caregiving empties people slowly. Not dramatically. Administratively. 1 refill. 1 sponge bath. 1 insurance hold time at a time. Dad died first. Heart attack. January. The neighbor found him collapsed beside the rose bushes. I still remember kneeling in wet grass beside his body while the ambulance lights painted the house red and blue. Mom watched from the kitchen window because she was too weak to come outside. She didn't cry until 2 days later at the funeral home. Hand resting on the casket lid. Whispering. He would have hated the brass handles. Interesting thing about long marriages. Sometimes grief sounds like practical complaints because love already said everything else years ago. After Dad died, the house got quieter. Not peaceful quieter. Hospital quieter. The kind where every sound feels too loud because someone is missing from it. Mom died in October. Tuesday morning. Her hand resting over mine. The hospice nurse stayed 2 hours afterward without speaking much. Just sitting beside me while the room adjusted to absence. I'll probably remember that kindness longer than most conversations I've ever had. The funeral happened Saturday. Cold rain. 40 people in dark coats. I arranged everything myself. Flowers. Programs. Church calls. Obituary. Sandwich platters afterward at the house. Interesting, honestly. Because daughters often become event coordinators for their own grief. Trent arrived 20 minutes late. Whitney stepped across wet cemetery grass complaining about parking before she even reached me. Then suddenly, she hugged me. Soft voice. Careful sympathy. The first truly personal interaction she'd ever initiated in 12 years. That should have warned me immediately. Manipulative people usually become warm right before they want something. At the reception afterward, Whitney cornered me in the kitchen beside the sink full of rinsed forks. Her mother Diane stood beside her smiling sadly. Then Whitney casually asked, "Did your mom ever mention the jewelry?" Interesting timing. Because apparently some people attend funerals emotionally while others attend inventory checks. I didn't answer. I picked up the sandwich tray and walked away. When I returned, Trent was coming downstairs from Dad's office. He froze slightly seeing me. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. Interesting. Because guilty people start searching houses before they start asking questions. 3 months later, we sat inside Bryson and Park Estates downtown while attorney Tom Bryson read the will aloud. Small conference room. Coffee stains on legal pads. Rain tapping softly against the windows. The house on Elm Street went to me. Specifically. Including contents. The codicil explained why clearly. In recognition of Iris Outen's role as primary caregiver during both parents' final years of life. The remaining assets split 60-40. Larger share to Trent. Interesting thing about fair inheritances. The person expecting more usually still feels cheated. Whitney interrupted the reading twice. Questions about earlier drafts. Questions about validity. Questions disguised as confusion but shaped like fishing hooks. Tom answered calmly each time. Signed. Witnessed. Notarized. Legally airtight. In the parking lot afterward, Whitney grabbed my arm beside my car. "We should sit down as a family," she said gently. "Figure out what's fair." Interesting word. Fair. Because manipulative people redefine fairness the second paperwork stops favoring them. "The will is what Dad wanted," I answered. Whitney smiled tightly. Then let go of my arm. That afternoon, I opened safety deposit box 247 at SunTrust Memorial. Placed certified copies of every document inside personally. Years working probate law teaches you something important. Families become unpredictable around property. Especially grieving families carrying entitlement disguised as emotion. 5 months later, I sold the house. Young couple buying their first home. Second baby on the way. $410,000. Cash close in 35 days. I used part of the money to buy a tiny condo near the coast. 640 square feet. 1 bedroom. 4th floor. 2 blocks from the sound. And honestly, for the first time in almost 2 years, the future felt quiet instead of heavy. I moved in the first weekend of June. The cedar lockbox Dad built in 1991 sat untouched in my bedroom closet. I planned to open it Saturday. I thought I had time. Interesting thing about peace. People who benefit from your exhaustion often panic when you finally start building it. Sunday morning. 9:14 a.m. I watched Trent's truck pull into the nearly empty parking lot below my balcony. Whitney climbed out beside him. White capri pants. Oversized purse. The same funeral smile already prepared on her face. 40 seconds later, they knocked on my door. And honestly, everything changed after that. Trent walked into my condo like he was inspecting property. Not visiting family. Inspecting property. Interesting difference. Because entitlement changes the way people move through rooms. He scanned the walls slowly. The unpacked boxes. The balcony doors. The white linen chair beside the window. Then sat down without being invited. Whitney locked the deadbolt behind herself. That tiny sound stayed with me later. Click. Interesting thing about manipulative people. They secure exits before conversations even begin. This is cute, Whitney said softly. Really cute. The smile never left her face. I poured coffee anyway. Honestly? Hospital caregiving trains politeness into your nervous system so deeply that even betrayal gets offered cream and sugar automatically. Trent leaned back in my chair. So look. Pause. Whit and I were talking. Interesting start. Because every disastrous family conversation begins with someone claiming teamwork first. This condo is a lot for somebody alone. 640 square feet. 1 bedroom. But apparently, my grief made it look excessive. Whitney folded her hands together sympathetically. We've just been worried about you. There it was. Concern. The favorite costume of controlling people everywhere. Then Trent stood up. Walked to the entry table. Picked up my keys from the ceramic bowl beside the door. And slid them into his jacket pocket. Like the condo already belonged to him emotionally. You don't need this house, he said calmly. Interesting sentence. Because people preparing to steal something often start by redefining whether you deserve it. He kept talking. Whit's family is driving to Asheville tomorrow. Pause. We can drop you at a shelter on the way. I remember staring at him quietly. Not because I didn't understand the words. Because I understood them perfectly. And honestly? Some betrayals arrive so cleanly your brain needs a second to catch up emotionally. Whitney nodded beside him. Just temporarily, sweetheart. Sweetheart. Interesting how often cruelty wears pet names. Bart can help list the condo. Bart. Whitney's realtor brother. The same brother whose business card accidentally slipped out of her purse at Mom's funeral. Interesting coincidence. Her phone lit up against the couch cushion while she spoke. Zillow agent notification. Listing draft. Unit 412 Soundfront Way. My address. Already prepared. That was the moment everything sharpened. Because suddenly, this wasn't emotional manipulation anymore. It was a plan. A rehearsed one. I watched Whitney flip her phone face down quickly. Then Trent asked. So you're cool with this? Interesting question. Because people attempting theft always want emotional consent attached to it afterward. I looked at both of them. And honestly? They were waiting for collapse. Crying. Begging. Exhausted caregiver behavior. The version of me they remembered from hospice. Instead, I simply said, I think you should go. Whitney blinked. Tiny flicker of confusion. Because calm women terrify manipulative people more than angry ones do. She stepped toward me slowly. Let me give you a hug. I stepped back once. Just enough to place the kitchen counter between us. Interesting thing about boundaries. Healthy people notice them instantly. Manipulative people act wounded by them. Whitney stopped smiling fully after that. Not completely. But enough for me to see the strain underneath it finally. They left 5 minutes later. Trent paused in the doorway like he wanted one final speech. Didn't find one. The elevator doors closed. And suddenly, the condo became silent again. I locked the deadbolt myself this time. Then walked to the kitchen drawer beside the refrigerator. Inside, taped beneath the back edge, was the spare key set I made the day I closed. Interesting thing about probate work. You learn to prepare for people before they realize you prepared for them. I made another coffee, sat at the counter, and stared at Trent's contact photo for a very long time. Him at 17. Graduation gown. Arm around my shoulders. Back when I still believed older brothers automatically protected younger sisters. Then I typed 3 words. Look inside Dad's lockbox. Sent. 4 minutes later, my phone rang. Trent. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. 5 total by nightfall. Interesting progression, honestly. Because panic escalates predictably once people suspect paperwork exists. First voicemail. Confusion. What lockbox? Iris, call me back. Second. Annoyance. Whitney audible somewhere behind him. Third. Pressure. Mentioning Whitney's mother now. Talking about family unity. Interesting strategy. Because manipulative families recruit witnesses before accountability arrives. Fourth voicemail. Threats. Lawyers. Rights. Empty legal language from a man who never actually read the will carefully. Fifth voicemail came at 8:09 p.m. Different tone entirely. Desperate. I'm driving to Greenville tomorrow. Pause. If there's a lockbox, I'll find it. Then the important sentence. Whatever's in there isn't yours alone. Interesting. Because guilty people expose themselves fastest when they start talking about ownership before evidence appears. I transcribed every voicemail onto my yellow legal pad. Word for word. The same pad where I used to write medication schedules for Mom. Funny, honestly. Because eventually grief paperwork became legal paperwork without changing notebooks. At 5 o'clock that evening, I changed the locks. New deadbolt. 3 fresh keys. Receipt saved carefully inside my desk drawer. Documentation. Always documentation. Monday morning. I drove to Greenville. Opened safety deposit box 247. The bank smelled like lemon polish and recycled air. Quiet. Controlled. Interesting how vaults always feel emotionally safer than family kitchens during inheritance disputes. Inside the box. 3 items. First. The certified will and codicil. Clean. Legally airtight. Attorney affidavit included. Second. Dad's handwritten letter. 2 pages. Engineering school cursive. Dated 6 weeks before his heart attack. I read the first line twice. Iris, your mother, and I both know who carried this family. Honestly? I had to stop reading for a minute after that. Because sometimes validation hurts almost as much as neglect once you finally receive it. Dad wrote about watching. Watching who answered hospital calls. Who changed bedding. Who stayed. Who disappeared. Then the final sentence. Don't let him take this house from you. Interesting thing about fathers. Sometimes the most protective thing they ever do happens after they're gone. The third item was an envelope in Mom's handwriting. Read when you need it. Not before. I didn't open it yet. Some grief arrives in layers your body schedules automatically. I photographed everything. Emailed copies to Carolyn Pute immediately. Senior partner at the probate firm. My boss for 10 years. And honestly? The closest thing I had left to family stability by then. That Tuesday, Diane Caldwell showed up at my condo unannounced carrying casserole. Interesting stereotype fulfillment, honestly. Because manipulative Southern women always arrive holding Pyrex like emotional camouflage. She somehow convinced security to let her upstairs. Coral linen dress. Soft perfume. Sympathy smile practiced into perfection. I make this for everyone going through difficult times. Chicken and rice casserole. Still warm. She spoke for 20 minutes straight on my balcony. Family healing. Regret. Compromise. How grief affects people differently. She called me sweetheart 11 times. I counted. Then finally, she placed her hand gently on my knee and said, "Family doesn't keep secrets from family." Interesting sentence. Because apparently inheritance theft sounds kinder when whispered softly enough. I never argued. Never explained. Just refrigerated the casserole calmly. And found the folded note hidden underneath the dish afterward. 3 words. Call your brother. There it was. Not compassion. Recruitment. That night, I got re-added to the family group chat. 6 of them. 1 of me. Messages flooding in. Concern. Prayer emojis. Passive aggression disguised as support. And then Bart. Whitney's realtor brother. Offered to list my condo directly in the chat. Interesting confidence. Because some people smell vulnerability and immediately draft paperwork. Carolyn told me not to leave the chat. Let them write, she said. Interesting thing about attorneys. They love when manipulative people document themselves voluntarily. By Wednesday morning, Carolyn reviewed everything. Voicemails. Screenshots. Lobby footage. Zillow draft evidence. She leaned back in her chair afterward and said, "You have a clean case." Not emotional reassurance. Structural reassurance. Honestly? That helped more. Then she asked quietly, "Why didn't you stop this sooner?" I thought about it carefully. Then answered truthfully. Because I kept hoping Trent would choose to be my brother. Carolyn nodded slowly. And honestly? That was the saddest part of the entire situation. Not the greed. Not the condo. The hope. Because hope keeps people standing in burning rooms long after smoke becomes obvious. Saturday night. The condo HOA welcome reception was scheduled downstairs. 40 residents attending. Wine. Jazz music. Name tags. And deep down, I already knew Trent and Whitney were coming. Interesting thing about entitled people. They mistake public spaces for leverage automatically. They thought embarrassment would make me surrender. Instead, I packed 4 envelopes into my canvas tote bag. 1 for Trent. 1 for Whitney. 1 for Diane. And 1 for Bart. Each sealed carefully. Each prepared by Carolyn personally. And honestly? None of them understood yet that the lockbox was never about money. It was about proof. The HOA welcome reception started at 7 p.m. 4th floor residents only. Wine table near the elevators. Soft jazz floating through the rooftop lounge. Tiny crab cakes nobody actually finished. And honestly? It should have felt normal. A fresh start. New neighbors. New life. Instead, I spent the entire afternoon preparing evidence packets like trial exhibits. Interesting thing about probate work. Eventually, emotional survival starts resembling case preparation automatically. Carolyn arrived at my condo around 5:40 carrying a leather portfolio and 2 iced coffees. Navy pantsuit. Silver reading glasses. Calm. Always calm. I think good attorneys understand panic wastes useful energy. She reviewed the envelopes one final time at my kitchen counter. Trent's packet. Whitney's packet. Diane's packet. Bart's packet. Each labeled neatly. Each containing something slightly different. Voicemail transcripts. Screenshots. The will. The Zillow draft. The lockbox letter excerpts. Interesting strategy. Because truth lands harder when customized to the specific lie each person told. You sure you want to do this publicly? Carolyn asked. Interesting question. Because technically, I still had one final chance to stay quiet and let the family mythology continue. I looked toward the balcony. Ocean wind moving softly through the screen door. Then answered honestly. They already made it public. Pause. They just assumed I'd stay embarrassed. Carolyn smiled slightly after that. Not proud. Not amused. Respectful. There's a difference. At 6:52. My phone buzzed. Building security downstairs. Miss Outton? Pause. Your brother says you invited him. Interesting. Because manipulative people love rewriting consent in real time. I looked at Carolyn once. Then answered. Let them up. The elevator doors opened 4 minutes later. Trent entered first. Whitney beside him. Bart behind them carrying a bottle of wine like this was still socially recoverable somehow. Interesting thing about entitled people. They always assume charm works longer than evidence. Whitney smiled immediately. Too quickly. We brought a housewarming gift. Housewarming. Interesting phrase from someone who already prepared a listing draft for my condo emotionally. I stepped aside calmly. Come in. The rooftop lounge slowly filled behind us. Neighbors laughing softly. Jazz piano near the windows. Name tags sticking crookedly against linen shirts. 40 strangers about to accidentally witness my family collapse structurally. And honestly? That still feels surreal remembering it. Trent walked toward the balcony immediately. Nervous energy vibrating off him now. Because deep down, he already knew the lockbox existed. He just didn't know how much Dad documented before dying. You sent weird texts, he said quietly. Interesting opening. Not. How are you? Not. I'm sorry. Just narrative control immediately. Whitney touched my arm softly. Sweetheart, this has gotten blown out of proportion. Sweetheart again. Interesting. Because manipulative people recycle tenderness the way corporations recycle slogans. I stepped away from her hand. Then placed the 4 envelopes carefully across the kitchen island. One by one. Like seating assignments. Trent stared down at his name. What's this? Documentation. That word changed the room instantly. Because guilty people react to documentation biologically. Shoulders tighten. Breathing changes. Voices sharpen. Bart tried laughing first. Interesting choice. Because weak men often mistake humor for defense strategy. You brought paperwork to a party? Yes. Silence. Huge silence. Then Whitney reached for her envelope carefully. Long manicured nails. Steady smile. But I noticed something important. Her wrist shook slightly. Tiny movement. Massive meaning. Carolyn stepped beside me then. Not introducing herself immediately. Just existing visibly. Another strategic choice. Because attorneys don't interrupt manipulative people early. They let them continue speaking first. Trent opened his packet halfway. Stopped at the voicemail transcript. Color draining from his face line by line. Especially this part. We can drop you at a shelter. Interesting thing about cruelty. Reading your own words later feels different without adrenaline protecting you. Whitney's expression shifted when she reached the Zillow screenshots. Listing draft. Unit 412 Soundfront Way. Suggested asking price already calculated. Bart whispered. Oh my God. First honest sentence anybody brought into my condo all week. Diane arrived 12 minutes later. Coral dress again. Pearl earrings. Casserole woman diplomacy mode fully activated. She entered smiling. Then froze seeing envelopes already open across the counter. Interesting honestly. Because manipulative families operate best when everyone lies sequentially instead of simultaneously. Carolyn finally introduced herself then. Carolyn Pute. Senior Probate Counsel. That changed everything structurally. Because suddenly, this wasn't emotional family conflict anymore. It was legal exposure. Trent straightened immediately. Defensive posture. We didn't do anything illegal. Interesting. Because innocent people usually ask questions first. Guilty people deny accusations nobody officially made yet. Carolyn opened her portfolio calmly. Removed printed screenshots. Security footage timestamps. Call logs. Then quietly asked. Would you like me to explain attempted coercive property transfer under North Carolina elder estate statutes? Bart stopped smiling completely after that. Whitney looked physically cold suddenly. Even inside the warm rooftop lounge. Interesting how fast confidence collapses once consequences enter the room. Neighbors nearby had stopped pretending not to listen by then. Wine glasses frozen halfway to mouths. Jazz music still drifting softly from the speakers. And honestly? The normalcy around the disaster made everything feel stranger. Like public humiliation always does. Trent slammed the packet shut suddenly. This is ridiculous. Interesting word. Because people losing control often downgrade reality linguistically first. You got the house already. There it was. Finally. The truth underneath the concern. The condo. The inheritance. The resentment. Not grief. Never grief. I looked directly at him. You got 60% of everything else. That's not the point. Interesting answer. Because it absolutely was the point. Whitney stepped forward quickly. Helen wanted fairness. Helen. Not mom anymore. Interesting slip. Because manipulative people lose relational language first when emotional performances crack. I opened Dad's letter carefully then. The room quieting almost immediately. 40 strangers listening now without pretending otherwise. And honestly? I almost couldn't read the first sentence aloud. Not because it was painful. Because suddenly Dad felt present in the room again. Iris, I read softly. Your mother and I both know who carried this family. Trent's face changed instantly. Recognition. Not surprise. Recognition. Interesting thing about absent sons. Deep down. They usually know exactly when they abandoned responsibility. I kept reading. Who stayed matters. Pause. Who disappeared matters too. Nobody moved. Even the rooftop bartender stopped wiping glasses. Then the final line. Don't let him take this house from you. Silence afterward. Massive silence. Because dead fathers telling the truth publicly leaves very little room for family mythology afterward. Whitney whispered first. This is manipulative. Interesting accusation. Coming from the woman who tried relocating me to a shelter while drafting a condo listing behind my back. Carolyn calmly slid another document across the counter. Cease and desist notices. One for each of them. Prepared already. Further contact regarding forced property transfer, Carolyn explained softly. Will be documented formally. Bart muttered something under his breath. Diane looked genuinely frightened now. Not emotionally frightened. Socially frightened. Huge difference. Because people obsessed with appearances fear witnesses more than wrongdoing. Then Trent did something honestly heartbreaking. He looked at me. Not angry anymore. Just desperate. And asked. You really think Dad loved you more? Interesting question. Because abandoned children often transform accountability into favoritism emotionally. I answered carefully. No. Pause. I think Dad trusted the person who stayed. That hit him harder than the legal documents ever could. I watched it happen physically. Shoulders collapsing slightly. Eyes dropping toward the floor. Because deep down, Trent knew the truth already. He just spent years avoiding rooms where someone might say it aloud. Whitney grabbed her purse immediately afterward. Fight or flight, finally choosing flight. We're leaving. Interesting. Because manipulative people love family conversations until evidence enters them. Trent stayed frozen another few seconds. Then finally removed something from his jacket pocket slowly. My condo keys. Placed them onto the counter. No apology. Honestly? That mattered less than people think. Because some betrayals move beyond apology structurally. He looked at Dad's letter one final time. Then walked out behind Whitney without another word. The elevator doors closed softly. And suddenly, the rooftop lounge started breathing again. Neighbors pretending to resume conversations. Jazz music continuing awkwardly. Wine glasses moving again. Interesting thing about public exposure. People always act like they didn't witness the entire collapse afterward. Carolyn packed her portfolio slowly. Then looked at me carefully. You okay? Honestly? I didn't answer immediately. Because grief and relief feel strangely similar in the body sometimes. Finally, I looked toward the ocean lights outside the balcony. And realized something important. For 2 years, I thought losing my parents left me orphaned. But standing there beside Dad's letter, I understood something differently. Love isn't proven by inheritance. It's proven by who stays when caregiving becomes inconvenient. And for the first time since Mom died, I stopped feeling guilty for surviving the family fracture. The rooftop reception ended awkwardly around 9:40 p.m. Neighbors drifted toward elevators carrying half-finished wine glasses and polite expressions pretending they hadn't just witnessed a family implode beside the charcuterie table. Interesting thing about public exposure. People never know whether to offer sympathy or congratulations afterward. Carolyn stayed until the last resident left. Then helped me stack untouched appetizer plates in silence. Tiny crab cakes. Wilted spinach dip. Paper napkins folded into damp squares beside abandoned drinks.